Hello, Malmo. Hope you're having a good time. So the clock started, so I'll try not to go over. Fortunately, the professor this morning covered many of the topics that I wanted to cover, so I can go a bit quicker perhaps than I have a habit of overrunning. So today I'm going to start off by talking about some of the global trends that I think are impacting the manufacturing industries around the world. And the first critical one that we're all too aware of at the moment is the global instability that's going on in the world. We don't need to dwell on what's in the news, but clearly we are moving to a multipolar world, and that's driving the need for everybody to relook at security issues, around supply chain issues, around how they manufacture goods and products and where they invest. So we're looking at resource and energy independence, a big topic in Europe at the moment. We're looking at domestic security, both in terms of national defense, in terms of cybersecurity, and in terms of supply chain infrastructures. And these things are going to fundamentally impact the way our customers and your organizations think about investment decisions in terms of both CapEx and OpEx decisions. So we're seeing huge investments in power, mining, those sorts of things. We're seeing significant investment in security at multiple levels, as I mentioned, cybersecurity, building security, infrastructure security, and everybody's looking at what do we do with our supply chains. You know, the situation in the Middle East is really making people think about the fragility of supply chains. And we had a dress rehearsal of this a few years ago with COVID, when our supply chains were challenged. The other sort of at the opposite, which is, you know, those trends you can look at through a very negative lens. It was pleasing to see the professor this morning talk through a positive spin on that it's going to create innovation, it's going to create opportunities for us to be more agile and to think differently and look at the world in a different way. So that was a very positive thing to hear this morning. When it comes to human and society development, I think there's lots of things changing at the moment. You know, if we look at population changes, you know, in many parts of the world, the population is aging, and that means that we're having to provide more social care. We're having to use technology to provide different types of social care. And at the same time, we're seeing that we need, you know, there's higher demands all around the world on higher nutritional standards, which is going to drive the need for more quality, the more traceability in our supply chains. And we're seeing this move gradually to personalized healthcare, which is driving big changes in some of our pharmaceuticals clients, because people with things like immunotherapies and things like that now, we're not going to have these huge pharma plants pumping out pills. We're going to be taking our own blood samples and creating our own medicines. And that's going to change the supply chain dynamics in that industry. And still we see this drive to want to have sustainable production. And the last speaker before the break talked, you know, the move to on land fish farming for sustainability reasons, great example of how we're continuing to progress in the sustainability space. So these changes are also, these trends are going to drive how manufacturing has to evolve and respond to these changes. At the same time, technology is advancing rapidly. You know, many of the discussions we've had today have been around AI. We're also, and AI is coming into all stages of the life cycle, how we design new processes, how we design new plants, how we adopt technology into our organizations, and how we do diagnostics on whether our processes are operating correctly. And a big thing for me that I'll come on to later is how do we accelerate delivery of solutions to the market. We're also seeing increased usage of remote monitoring technology in the healthcare industry so that people can be cared for at home, and what that means for the medical devices industry. Drones and robotics are becoming ever more prevalent. One of the technologies that we take to market is mobile operator round technology for supporting plant workers as they do their daily inspection rounds. As we develop that for the future, we see a very different world. Majority of the inspection rounds will be done by robots, whether they're dogs or flying drones, and the human operator will go out to deal with exceptions. And that means we have to think very differently about how we make that software evolve as we go forward, for example. And I've already mentioned, this move to personal medication and things is going to transition things like the life sciences industry. Now, when we think as AVEVA about where is the future, we try to look at what are the industrial value chains that are going to be driving the global economy, driving the manufacturing economy. And I've just picked on 4 of those today. The intelligence economy is all around us. It's all AI, it's data centers, it's chip manufacturing. That is driving, and all these value chains are heavily interlinked. So that intelligence economy is driving the growth in energy demand in our customer base. And that growth in energy demand is going hand in hand with the energy transition. And we'll see what the next few weeks means for the energy transition as countries want to ensure that they have energy independence going forward. At the same time, a bit of an eye test for me here, society wants to move on and improve the quality and health of our citizens and the quality of our food, nutrition, etc. And that is also intimately linked to the intelligence economy. We want to use these new technologies to improve how we treat ourselves, how we look after ourselves and the well-being of our families. And then finally, this is all bound by the political circumstances that we operate and that when we're making investment decisions now, people have to be very bold and be very confident that they can deliver at scale and at pace so that they can maximize the return on investment that they're making. As you can see from the diagram here, I'm just trying to show how interweaved these things are. Now, there are various technology trends, and before the break, we were talking about the Cyber Resilience Act that's going on in the EU. Similar legislation is going to roll out across the world. Australia's talking about it, Indonesia, the UK. So this is going to become part of the everyday life of the industrial software world. And as Doug mentioned, it's starting with us, the technology suppliers at the moment, but it will impact owner-operators, engineering companies. They'll have to think about it's a different lens in which we look at keeping our software architecture secure and robust and moving forward as these cyber threats evolve. You can't give any presentation or attend any presentation without talking about the use of analytics, big data, data science, and that's going to become commoditized. As AVEVA, we're trying to take a leadership position in it, in the safe and scalable use of AI and data science within our technology stack. But ultimately, this is going to be commodity. It will be everywhere. It will be prevalent everywhere. And that will change the way we have to think about software development, software design, and bringing it into our organizations. We will ultimately just be bound by our imaginations as to how we use technology. And that impacts how you think about your future projects and what you're trying to achieve. Again, big movement to the cloud. And cloud brings a lot of opportunity in terms of being able to manage data at scale and manage and deploy applications at scale and pace across your organization. And that goes hand in hand with having proper data management policies and procedures and putting your data into context to allow you to make the maximum use of that. And that's critical if you want to go on and leverage AI and analytics. You really need to understand your data structures correctly and get that in place. Coming more focused to MES systems, manufacturing execution systems, the last few years, there's been a bit of a pause on large-scale MES. And one of the reasons for that is many of our customers have been rolling out upgrades and maintenance to their ERP systems. And that's been a wave for the last few years, and that wave is now almost reaching completion, and our customers are thinking, what next? And the professor alluded to it this morning. We've spent millions of pounds deploying SAP and other ERPs into the process and manufacturing industries, and are we really getting the value that we hoped and thought we would? And now, companies are saying, okay, we're now getting resources available. We need to think about how we improve our manufacturing, move to smart manufacturing and these technologies. And MES is right at the forefront of that. So literally in the last 12 to 8 months, we've seen a massive uptake in inquiries for MES systems from across the market, particularly, I have to say, in Europe and Scandinavia. So that's good to see. And that is linked to this IT-OT convergence, because traditionally, the manufacturing organization would be the person who specified the use cases and requirements for an MES and the people who ultimately would procure it. Now there's a much tighter integration between the OT and the manufacturing side, and the IT teams are looking at the technologies. And part of that is driven by A, the increased cybersecurity requirements, and B, this, hey, we've got to do something clever with analytics and big data. So moving into what does this mean for MES and what's important. If we start on the top line, everybody is always focused on total cost of ownership. One thing that's been a common discussion in the MES market for many years, tied to that now and of more importance is time to value. Historically, MESs have been delivered as monoliths. And we start on one site, build a template, and then we think about how we roll it out. That takes too long. I've been involved in MES projects where the company's management structure has changed by the time you've done the first 2 sites, and nobody in the customer's senior management chain remembers why they started doing an MES in the first place. That is not delivering value at scale and pace to our customers. But at the same time, while we want to be agile and deploy quicker, we have to recognize that the customer's needs are going to have to change and evolve over many years. So how do we design for that in the way we deliver an MES? The skill sets are changing. Doug alluded to before the break that the guy who's going out to maintain the shop floor now doesn't have 25 years experience. He might be a young graduate or an apprenticeship he's been in the company 3 or 4 months. We need to recognize that the skill sets are different. They're not necessarily lower, they're different, and we need to design the software to accommodate that. But and tied to time to value and total cost of ownership, we need to be able to roll out to multiple sites at a much greater pace than we have historically done. And that drives to the life cycle value cost. And the way this is all achieved is through being more ruthless in standardization. Standardization lowers your total cost of ownership, allows you to accelerate deployment, allows you to migrate your staff from role to role across the organization because they understand the technology they've seen on other sites and things like this. And it's not just AVEVA who say this. The leading industry analysts, Gartner, IDC, ARC, I can show them all. They're all talking about the same thing, that MES needs to be scalable, agile, and composable. And that's the focus that AVEVA has been spending the last 18 months focusing on. How do we address this program of agility and scalability in MES? and my colleague is going to come on stage next and go into much greater detail on this. But what we've been driving to is what we call the composable MES. Now, the history of this is we started this in our services organization as a project to make our services delivery team more efficient. And then we realized that by changing the way we deploy the technology, we can address all these items that are showed on the prior slide. So I'm not going to steal Michael's thunder, Mikael's thunder. What we've built now is a standard set of libraries that you can compose your MES from. Standard functional modules with the core requirements of the MES. We then layer that, we can combine those to create use case libraries. And then we have a composition engine that allows you to pull those together to build the MES the way you need for your site. Which people, which production line, what process, and that's all done within a simple configurable engine to allow you to build that MES at scale and pace, and to add new use cases into your own personal library to deliver at scale. We believe this really accelerates the deployment of MES at either a single site, or you can deploy it at multiple sites at the same time. Because if you start with the standard libraries out of the box, you can get that multiplication factor. Our AVEVA service team has now delivered 13, or we're in the process of delivering about 13 projects at the moment using this approach, the composable MES. 4 of those projects are out of the box. No configuration, no customization, ignoring the integration to the ERP and other systems, but the use cases that the customer are using are standard AVEVA library components. This has dramatically reduced the time to value for those customers. Now, some of the bigger customers with unique processes, yes, there's always going to need to be some level of configuration and customization. But again, with this approach, you can layer the standard functionality out and start getting value in your organization and come back in a phase 2, do a gap analysis and make the difference. This makes a huge difference to our customers. Secondly, we talked about the need for big data and enterprise data management. One of the things we've done, we've taken now all the data, all the event types, all the data types of standard MES can now be published to Connect automatically, so that you can bring the data from all your MES systems across your organization into a common visualization element. It's all contextualized, so that you can look at all your organizational performance in a common way. And that allows you then to apply analytics. This is using AVEVA's advanced analytics. And what we've been doing here is we've been building a series of templated use cases that we see are very common to MES customers in CPG, food and bev, etc. You go to a customer, any customer in the CPG industry, and ask them, do they care about quality? Yes, they do. So we can templatize that use case. We know because we've been delivering a standard MES through composable, we know what data sets, event types, etc. are going to be developed, so you can have a templated approach to the analytics for those use cases. Yes, you can go further. You can push all this data out of Connect into Databricks, into Palantir, whatever system you want to do. We have partnerships with some of those customers and are developing more. But your engineer on the shop floor wants to focus on quality, wants to look at the ideal batch profile or the golden batch profile. Sorry, I wonder why you're all looking blankly at this slide. So these are some of the things that we've been building these templated analytics use cases for. And we will go on to build more and more of these over time because we want to get people to get to that value point faster. So with that, I'm going to pause, I think. Look at that.
Look at that.
Look
0,
at
0,
that.
0.
Super fantastic.
That is wonderful. Thank you, David. And we're going to look forward to talking more after that. Thank you.